Hello! Today we'll be talking about interviewing tips for student teachers who are applying for teaching jobs. There are three types of interviews that we'll be discussing today. First, mini interviews or screening interviews. Second, informational interviews. And third, the professional job interview that's probably on most of your minds as you think about applying for jobs. Mini or screening interviews will happen at the Education Career Fair. They may often happen at conferences or as you interact with principals or teachers or even superintendents in your school system. They're a shorter interview that's a chance for you to promote your skills. Basically, the recruiter will ask you one or two questions to sort of find out a little bit more about you and hopefully help move your resume to the next level. Usually these are basic questions like, tell me about yourself, why do you want to be a teacher, what are your key strengths, tell me something more about what's on your resume. The key skill that you want to have to succeed at a mini or screening interview is the elevator speech. The elevator speech and all other interview skills are really built on selling your own skills as a teacher. So make sure that you're comfortable talking about your strengths and your skills. Why are you the best person for their classroom? An elevator speech is also sometimes known as a 30-second introduction. So the idea is if you were stuck in an elevator riding from the top floor to the lobby with the superintendent or HR administrator at the school you wanted to work at, what would you say to them between the top floor and the bottom floor in order to get them to move your resume to the next level? You would want to introduce yourself and also give them a credential that makes sense for the job that you're applying for. So, usually for teachers, introduction plus maybe the fact that you're a ASU graduate and what area you want to teach in. You should have a specific objective in mind when you are introducing yourself. Whether that's a full-time job or just learning more about their school system, make it clear to them what your next steps are in the job search process. You also want to show how you've already demonstrated interest in their school or their position. People want to hire students who are interested and who have taken the time to do some background research. So tell them what you already know. Maybe you know someone who works in their school system already, or maybe you've looked on their website, but tell them what you know about them. Also, explain how you are qualified for the job. So that comes back to those key skills that you're thinking about. Maybe you stand out because of your technology background, or maybe you stand out because you speak Spanish, but tell them what sets you apart that makes you extra qualified for the job. And then, what steps are you hoping to take next? Do you hope to get an interview, or maybe you hope to go on for a graduate school interview? What are the next steps that you're going to take to further this opportunity? Remember, your job search is ultimately in your hands. So don't wait for someone to ask you to take initiative. Go ahead and start your own process. One of the great ways to do that is with informational interviews. Informational interviews are not job interviews. In fact, you often will have an informational interview with someone who may not even have a job opening right now. They're scheduled by you, the job seeker, and they're definitely not to ask for a job, but to ask an expert for more information on the kinds of jobs or the career that you're seeking. The purpose is to increase your knowledge, preparation, and your professional network. These can be great for exploring outside of the box job opportunities like teaching abroad or teaching out of state, working in nonprofits, and it also can help you get the inside scoop on what a particular potential employer or school system is like. Remember that you need to be as prepared as you would be for a formal interview. You'll be leading the session by asking them questions. So it's not as formal, but you need to be prepared with questions to ask. No one wants to sit down with you for 20 minutes and have you just sort of stare at them blankly. You should have some questions to ask them about their opportunity. So typically the key skills here are elevator speech plus the targeted questions that you're going to ask them. You can write your questions ahead of time. Keep in mind that usually you will take about 20 minutes of this person's time, so gauge the number of questions you're going to ask by sort of how long will it take to have a 20-minute discussion. Ask questions that show that you have researched their organization and also questions that show your knowledge of yourself and your skills and their goals. You can see examples on the career website, which is careers.appstate.edu, to help you get started. Be open to suggestions on your resume and job search strategy as well. And always end by asking for an additional contact, someone else that they might know that would also have information that would help you with your job and career search. Professional job interview. This is probably what all of you think of when you think of an interview for your career. Typically these happen once you've already submitted your resume and cover letter. You may have had a screening interview in person or by phone, but you want to have some time set aside with the principal and key staff. That makes it a professional interview. Be prepared for behavioral style questions. For example, what would you do if blank? Tell me about a time when you blank. So they'll want to hear stories and specific examples of your skills. If you're meeting in person, remember full professional dress and demeanor are required. So the key skills to ace a professional job interview are going to be your elevator speech, your targeted questions, as well as interview preparation. Remember that when it comes to interviews, practice makes perfect. Up to 93% of communication has been discovered to be nonverbal, so make sure that you have professional dress, you have good eye contact, a firm handshake, and a confident entrance. Even if you're on the phone with the person, make sure that your voice sounds confident and that you're standing up and smiling and exuding confidence. Even if they can't see you, that will definitely come across. Typically, they'll ask you to introduce yourself, or they'll ask a question that's something like, tell me a little bit about yourself. This is your chance to use your mini elevator speech or 30-second introduction to gauge your key strengths and let them know who you are and what your credentials are. You'll also want to practice some common questions. For behavioral questions, such as tell me about a time when you had a conflict with a supervisor, or tell me about how you've handled difficult parents in a classroom, remember to use the STAR method. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So you want to fully describe the situation at hand, the tasks that you had to undertake, what actions you decided to use, and then what was the result. Students often forget to tell what the result was. If you had a conflict with your supervisor, were you able to resolve it through your actions, or did you learn something about how to approach them next time? Either of those are great examples of a result. Remember to always be positive in an interview. They will ask you questions about your weaknesses and challenges, but you need to state those in a positive light. It helps to state how you're working to grow or improve in areas that are currently weaknesses for you. So if, for example, you've been challenged during your student teaching by classroom discipline, what are some action steps that you're taking in order to get better at managing a classroom? They might also ask you about a negative past situation, like tell me about a supervisor you didn't get along with, or what was your worst boss like? Remember to approach those questions in a positive light as well. Talk about what you learned from the situation, and definitely never ever say anything negative about a past supervisor or coworkers during an interview. Remember that the interviewers want to think of you as a potential coworker, and so they don't want to imagine you saying negative things about them. Remember to always highlight your strengths. Sometimes it's difficult for teachers to talk about their own abilities. It sort of feels like they're bragging, But remember, the interview is your chance to talk about your strengths, so you need to promote yourself or they're not going to know all of your great qualities. Bring a portfolio with a pad of paper in it to write notes to yourself and names. You don't want to be writing during the entire interview, but you do want to jot down the names of the people who have interviewed you and take their cards and contact information for later on. Also, remember every interview ends with, "Do you have any questions for us?" So prepare some targeted questions in advance that you have about their school system. It could be, "What's a typical day like?" or "Tell me a little bit more about information on their website." Make sure that you're showing that you're interested and that you know a little bit about them already. Always, always follow up with a thank you note after a professional interview. If they had any directions for you about moving forward with your application, make sure that you follow those. I mentioned that you should always send a thank you note, but take time to reflect on each interview. What did you learn? What did you do well? What can you do better next time? Practice software is available for free from the Career Development Center at careers.appstate.edu. This software is tailored for teachers and asks typical interview questions that teachers get under the custom interview section. So if you need any help with the perfect interview software, go on our website or call us at 828-262-2180. And in the end, after you go through the application process and interviews, remember you're going to find your calling and career path. So that'll be a very satisfied feeling.